lot of people ask us, why is it so expensive to live in PNG? Now you know. We're just excited to be with you here this morning. Thought that'd be kind of a fun way for you to see a little bit of what daily life is like for us. We don't tend to have a lot of videos or pictures of town because theft is such a big problem. If you have your phone out, it's going to get snatched and they're going to run with it. So that's the easiest way to take videos and pictures. So sometimes we have to be just real kind of sneaky about it, or have, okay, you watch while I take a video real fast, So it's just a little bit of a different life over there, a little bit of a different way that people do stuff.
Emily enjoys making those videos too much, I think. Ayo, good morning. Mi plano looking mi plan long pla time ya na try pla solwara mi stop na melo you na mina. Hard lo by mi pla looking mi ta so you mi kambu now. Na you mi lo to lo big player. So mi pla ama maslo looking face play you plug in. Good morning. Good to see you. The ocean is big, isn't it? And we have missed you guys, and it's so good to be back, to be able to just share some stories of what God is doing in the lives of people in PNG as well as in our lives. We noticed there's a lot of new faces since we were last here, and we just kind of want to talk a little bit about, obviously, we are missionaries. We are missionaries wanting to do church planting in Papua New Guinea, so moving into a tribe in Papua New Guinea. So you might be wondering, where is Papua New Guinea? By the way, before I get too much into this, we are going to do a giveaway. So you need to pay close attention. If you're interested in coffee, if you're a coffee person, PNG coffee is one of the finest beans. These are beans. So if you have a coffee grinder and you like coffee, pay close attention, because we're going to ask some questions at the end. And I have some homemade bilums. So the ladies in PNG make these. Both men and women carry them. It's not, just women, but these are homemade. There's a saying in Pidgin, the national language that we had to learn. For believers will say this when they're referring to trusting in Christ. They say, "Mi hangamaplo bigpla, mi hangamaplo Jesus taso." And what that comes from is when they arrive at their house or a friend's house, there's usually a tree with a branch that's cut off, kind of like a hook, or there'll be nails, on the floor joists, like the rafters, and they'll hang these bags up on them, and that's where it comes from, right? They're hanging their lives up on Christ. Just kind of a cool little thing that they say. So PNG is in close to Southeast Asia, Indonesia, right above Australia. It is roughly the size of California. There are over 800 different, actually close to 900 languages, and as many different tribes, people groups. And that's not dialects. There's actually more dialects within each of those close to 900 languages. And when we talk about us being missionaries, a lot of people say, "Hey, how was your mission trip?" And it's like they don't realize that we're actually there long term, working among the people, and our desire is to actually move into a community, build a house, live with the people, learn their language, translate the Bible into their language, and then present the gospel. Teach. We do what's called chronological teaching. We start in Genesis. We build the foundations for God having to send his son to die on the cross. If you don't start there with people from they're very animistic, they have no concept of scripture, and you have to start from the beginning. And I think as a nation we're kind of in that same place. So church planting, there's different phases. We finished up partnership development, which is raising support to actually go to the field, and that was during COVID. It took quite a while, and then learning the national language, and that's what we did this first term before coming back. So our current kind of place right now is just finding coworkers. We need to find a couple families, two other families that we can partner with to move into a remote location to begin this type of work. And then you can see kind of the rest of that. We'll be sharing just kind of our journey over the past 2 years with you guys, and a lot of that will be stories, funny stories, maybe some difficult stories. It's not all just amazing, new, exciting, but there's some difficult stuff too. And when we first arrived in country, and the first morning we woke up, everything was just new and exciting. Like it took close to a decade to actually get through the training, Bible school training, and then raise support and get there. And we were just like, are we actually here? Is this real? Are we dreaming? One of the first things I had to learn how to do to get around was drive manual shift. And some of you older people are like, come on, that's easy. But I grew up in the era where everybody was shifting over to automatic, and so I knew a little bit, but I never drove on any roads. But that really wasn't that difficult. The difficult thing was driving on the left-hand side of the road, like they do in England and Australia. And then the roads over there are just full of potholes. There's not like a really good shoulder on either side, and people walk in the road. So you're dodging people, chickens, dogs, and yeah, it was definitely challenging, and had some close calls where I went and turned, and I ended up turning onto the right side, and thankfully God was watching over us. This picture here, like you'll see these big trucks just loaded with people, and it's kind of like over in Africa, there's always room for one more. You'll see people holding pigs, chickens, they're just packed in there, and the poor car, right, like its suspension is just falling apart. One of the things I really looked forward to when going over was I've always had an interest in learning language and learning about other cultures, and now I realized, this is my job, because in order to present the gospel to people in this different culture, I have to learn their culture and understand how they think. I have to be able to speak their language and communicate clearly, and so I just was so excited each morning to get out there into the villages. I would bring my recorder and my notepad and just take as many notes as I could, hear their stories, record them, and then later on I would go back and transcribe the stories and everything, and just glean what I could about the culture and about the language. And that was super exciting for me. I don't know about Emily, but
not my strong suit.
One of the biggest boons in PNG culture, and maybe a lot of other similar cultures, like island cultures, is children. Just our children were huge bridges in building relationships with people. As you probably have seen, our kids are not shy. They'll come up and give you a hug, even if they've never met you before. And a lot of missionary kids are very afraid of the people initially. They're afraid of going up and everything. And our kids are we feel like God has built them to be able to live overseas. And so just having kids is just a really big help to us in our ministry. One of the things, so when we would go to the markets, the people, the ladies, the market mamas, we call them, would see the boys. And over there, the boys just get spoiled. Like, girls are the ones who do all the hard work. I'm not saying this is right, but they carry all the responsibility, and the boys are just allowed to kind of run wild and get away with murder. And so not only that, but if you're American, people over there love Americans because during World War II, they viewed us as the heroes, saving them from Japan. And the Japanese treated them very harshly, did some terrible things to the people, forced them into labor. And so being Americans, white, and boys, like our Silas and Owen were just spoiled so much. And an example, like when we'd go to the markets, the people, as you saw in the video, like they put their produce in these heaps, and then they'll have a price for a heap of, whatever it is, peanuts, tomatoes. So we would buy, a heap of peanuts, and the boys would then be given like another heap, like extra, just for them. We couldn't take those. They would say, these are for the boys. And so after a while, like Silas and Owen got used to that, and we'd go to the market, and they would go up to the mamas, hands wide open, and the market mamas were happy to oblige. That could also be a pain in the butt sometimes, because they'd like to give them lollipops and candy, and the dental care that we get is not the greatest, and so yeah. Food is a huge part of the culture. I think most cultures have their own aspect of food, but they have to work very hard for their food. They plant taro is like a root vegetable, not a vegetable, but like a root that they eat, starch. Sweet potatoes, there's so many different types of sweet potatoes. They don't just have the yams like we have. So they work, early morning, they get out there, they break the ground, they weed, and they have to work very hard for their food, and they share. They have this great gift of sharing. And like if I were to open up a container of peanuts, and this actually happened, I was at a Bible conference, and I was surrounded by all these people, women, children, men, and I'm hungry. Like my blood sugar drops really like within a couple hours. Like my metabolism is just crazy, and so I have to eat constantly. And I'm eating peanuts, and I realize, oh, I need to share. So I literally gave like maybe 5 peanuts to all these people, probably like 20 people, and I ended up with maybe 2 or 3 peanuts. So I realized after that, when I go places, I need to bring a lot of extra food so I can share, because that's a huge part of the culture. It'd be very just rude and shameful to not share your food. And one of the things that we call him Papa Raymond, he and his wife are kind of like adopted Emily and I and our kids, and they call us their children. And he told us before we left, and we were saying goodbye to him and his family. In Pidgin, it's "You let him ol piknini drink mauswara plamipla," and mauswara, it sounds like it, mouth water basically is what that means, spit. And there'd be times where like our kids would be thirsty over there, and I didn't really like it, but they would drink water out of the containers. And granted, they have taps close to the fence, so they fill their containers up. The containers aren't the cleanest, so they could get sick. But by not saying no, don't let them drink your water, or no, they can't eat this, like they felt so honored by us and loved by us, and would tell us a lot of missionaries are afraid of letting their kids eat our food. Like they'll say no, or they won't eat it, and it makes us feel like we're dirty, like they don't want to associate with us. And so we realized, wow, this is really important for us to, we might have the crummy tummies from time to time, but really we didn't as much as I thought we would. I would have expected to be sick a lot more often. And I would say, Emily would agree with this, like we probably were sick less there than we are here. We did have other health issues, but. So just some more examples of just how kids are just amazing at building relationships. Emily has a funny story, and then afterwards I'll share a funny story. So
yeah, we always have funny stories, right? Because mix-ups and just not knowing. And one of the things that we've learned about just culture in general is that even if we learn a word, what we have in our head as a picture of what that word means might be totally different than what they think of when they see that object or when they hear that word. And I really grasped this hard for the first time when I was telling a story to my friend about a time when my phone got stolen, and the person had cut the screen and stolen my phone out of the window. And I was telling the story in Pidgin, practicing my Pidgin, telling the story, and she kept correcting me because I kept saying that they cut the screen, and she said, no, they broke the window. And I said, no, they cut the screen. Like, I knew what I was trying to say. And then it dawned on me, when they think window, they think a hole in the wall. When I think window, I think window, glass up and down, window open shut. That's not the picture that they have in their head when they think window. They don't have glass windows in their houses. So for me to say cut the screen was too specific. I could have just said broke the window, and she would have knew exactly what I was talking about. So we have just like different ideas, different pictures in our brains, even when we do learn some of these words. We had a close friend who had us, hosted us for our bush orientation time in their village, and she loved plants. She had flowers and plants, and she'd find all these cuttings of these plants that she thought were so pretty, and she'd plant them. And this one here, you can see in the picture, it's very pretty. It's ornamental looking. It's got kind of the different colors. She loved this, and she would plant it everywhere, all over her house. And after a little while, she noticed that when people would walk by her house, they were just like giving really weird looks to her plants in the front. And finally, after a while, one of her friends that she knew had a good relationship with was like, Robin, we want to know, we're all curious, why do you have so much of this plant planted around your house? You have a toilet inside. And she was like, what are you talking about? You know, and she's like, yeah, that's, and she like gave the word for the plant, and it translates exactly to toilet greens. This is what they would plant right around their little toilet houses because it grows really fast and it's soft and it's not poisonous. And this is their toilet paper. And so they were just like, why is this weird missionary lady planting toilet greens around her house? So it's just like these things that we're like, oh, it's just a pretty plant. It has a completely different meaning to them over there. And we bumped into stuff like that all the time. And it just is like, you just got to laugh because, yeah. Our kids, too, it really kind of lowered our kids' expectations for what's fun or what's interesting or, you know, like what's like something cool to do. When we got back here, the like two number one things that our kids were like, this is the awesomest thing ever: escalators, drive-throughs. Like the first time we went through a drive-through, they were like, why aren't we going inside? I thought you said we were gonna like get lunch, you know? I was like, we're getting lunch right now. Mom, what are you talking about? We're in the car still. Like they could not comprehend till they passed that food through the window, and then they were like, this is the best thing ever. We didn't even have to get out, you know? We often, when we're out and about, like if you go to town or if we're in the village, there's not a lot of places to go to the bathroom. There's no public restrooms. Like we would impress upon the kids, go before we leave, because you do not want to go when we're out and about, right? And if you do have to, sometimes you just have to, you just never know what you're gonna get. It could be a hole in the floor, it could be a squatty potty, like you never know what's gonna be on the other side of that door. And so when we got back in to civilization, the first, modern airport we bumped into was Sydney, Australia. We got off the plane, and I took the kids to the restroom, and one of my kids, who is not quiet, announces to the whole room, Mom, this one has a toilet and a seat. Like, she was just like, you keep that joy. So some of the other things that we bump into as far as just like what people picture or what they have in their minds is like who we are. When they see white people, they know, they're rich, they're here because they want to give us stuff, and they're either American or Australian. Those are like the biggest, the two that they see the most often. And so we bump into these stereotypes a lot because that's just, they see us, and a lot of the people that they see that are white are also missionaries. And so they have this idea like, oh, we can just go up and ask them for stuff, right? So anytime we go out and about, we're always getting asked for money, for rides, for food. And this is a culture that shares everything. These people are not starving. So it's like when they're asking it for us, not only do we know now that we've learned some things, we know that it's uncultural. You don't just walk up to a stranger and ask for things. It has to be like your friend that you would ask to borrow. Yeah, or your family. And so they're actually breaking culture by coming up and like asking us these things. And so we kind of had to learn how to say no, or kind of like the phrases that we could use to kind of be like, I don't know you. Why would I, give you that type thing? Because it's not one-sided. Anytime somebody is asked for something in the culture, they know if they give it, next time they need something, they're going to be able to go and they'll ask that person, and it's kind of like a back and forth. So for them to ask a stranger who they probably would never see again is really uncommon, but they feel like, oh, because they're white, they can just, anytime they want to, they can go ahead and do that. And so it's really common when driving down the road or when we're walking in town, we just hear people yell, white man, like, and they get like really excited and point at us and stuff. And there's many times where Jordan would just like shout right back, black man, and they laugh. They think that's so funny. They just like die laughing every time that he does that. And then it just kind of breaks the ice and you can kind of have a conversation with them. Or they have phones, so they've seen videos. They like to watch American movies. That's one of their favorite things to do. And they'll pick up these English phrases that they don't know what they mean. They don't have a context for it, but they want to use their English. And so we'll be out and about, and somebody will just be like, love you. And so we'll just be like, love you too, So those are some of the things that we bump into pretty regularly. This is the base where we live in Goroka, which is the highlands region. We're up in the mountains, so we have really nice weather. Not as humid as the coast, not as hot. Gets into the 80s during the day, and then it cools off really nicely at night. And this is our inside the fence kind of safe place to be. We can kind of wander around this center and don't really have to worry about physical safety stuff. And our kids just find their fun. I mean, Silas is fishing in a puddle. It's just like, you go for it, dude, We try to make as much normalcy for the kids as we can. We do birthdays, we do celebrations. They'll do like a big Easter egg hunt for the kids. Most of it is just kind of a balancing act of just, okay, ministry, family. It tends to kind of be one or the other, and we're just trying to find that balance of where we're including both. And same thing with culture. We have to balance new culture from home. They need to be used to some of these things from America, but we also want them to be comfortable in this culture. And so we're constantly just kind of finding that balance, finding that blend between those things. Over there we homeschool, and the kids are doing pretty good with that. I enjoy it. I have a teaching background, so that's one of the things that I get to do in the mornings, spend time with them. And just, that's just how we live life on center there. A lot of the housing is provided for us as like the new people coming in. We have guest houses we can stay in at these different bases until we're settled, until we know like where we are and we can start building our own house.
Okay, now it's my turn. I think I want to highlight some positive aspects of PNG culture because there are many. As Emily mentioned, or I mentioned earlier, they're very sharing. They share with each other, but it is reciprocal. So if somebody who you have a relationship with comes and brings, food from their garden, or a bilam, or something like, they're showing love through doing that. But they're also, when they need something, if they need medicine, or like when we go over to see them, if we haven't seen them in a long time, we would bring, a bag of rice or oil or sugar. Like those are kind of like staple foods for them. But they, if you were to go, when we were in the phase of language learning, we were depending on them for help. Like we're babies, right? We don't know anything about this culture. And so when we would go over to their house, regardless of what they were doing, if they were busy or in their garden, they would stop and they would spend the time with us, even if it meant, not getting as much accomplished in their day. And it would be the same if they came to our house too, which could be challenging at times because they wouldn't always come at the best times. But, we just learned quickly that that's just how it is over there and got used to that. And if somebody came over, they might have a reason for coming over or they need something, but they're going to tell you a story for maybe an hour before they get to that point. And that's just normal. And we learn not to. I really didn't feel frustrated. I enjoy just listening to people, so it wasn't too bad. But there were some times where people would come over and the kids were melting down, or we're doing school and it's like, why? This isn't a good time. But we just dealt with it. But people are so generous. As Emily mentioned, nobody is starving over there. Like, it's not like Africa where it's, a desert climate and they can't grow food. It's an amazing climate for growing. And their gardens are just full of, different, tropical fruits and vegetables, especially in the highlands where we lived. And they work very hard, even though they don't really have a concept of time like we do. They call it P&G time. John, when he goes to the Red House Church in New York with the Native American peoples there, they say Indian time. It's very similar to P&G time. It's so if there's a big event, they won't start until everybody has shown up, especially the kind of the honored guests or the leaders in the community. If those people don't show up, they don't have the meeting. People are very helpful. Like if you need directions, you can ask and they'll take time and explain. There is sometimes you'll run into we call it honor shame. P&G culture is an honor shame culture. So kind of how that plays out is if I ask somebody for directions and they don't know, they'll feel ashamed to say, I don't know. So they'll tell me directions, and I'll follow the directions. And when I arrive, I realize, wow, they didn't know what they were talking about. Or the other way, I could say, hey, do I go this way? And they know that the way I'm saying is wrong. They don't want to tell me that I'm wrong. And so they'll say, yeah, that's the way. Same thing will happen. So, like if they do know the way, though, they're very helpful, and the honor shame thing can kind of be tricky at times. Yeah, the people certainly are not lazy.
Does anybody know what that is? Guesses? Yes. Coffee beans.
Coffee is one of the biggest exports, and people make their livelihood by planting, harvesting. They work very hard during coffee season, and that can be a tricky time if you're doing ministries, teaching and stuff, because you tend to have to hold the meetings in the evening. I'm not a night person. I just want to wind down. I don't want to do work, but sometimes that's the only time that you can meet with people or do ministry and Bible studies. So these are some of the positive aspects of living over in PNG, some of the positive, good things about the culture, but there's also some really challenging things about the culture and just living in the environment there. One of the things I realized within the first few months was that I have a tendency to get tropical ulcers. So anytime, in a tropical environment, there's lots of bacteria. There isn't winter to kill germs and bacteria. It just grows at an exponential rate. If you get a cut or a mosquito bite, it can turn into a full-blown crater on your skin within just a matter of a couple days. Some of the kids also dealt with this. Very painful. You have to scrub it out. When we left, first few months we were in a really hot environment. When we left there, I had these sores all over my body, and I had to scrub them out, put medicine on it, cover it, and take antibiotics. A couple of times I had to take antibiotics, which over time, your body builds up a resistance, and then you have a lot of stomach issues. So if it could help it, I would try not to take them, but sometimes things would just not improve, and I had to take them. Also, just in general, the medical, as you can imagine, PNG is a developing third world country, and so the medical care is not the greatest. We had friends there was a guy who had really bad malaria, and I hadn't seen him come out of his house in several days, and I ended up, he was really weak, fever. I took him to a clinic somebody had told me about, and we waited all day long, and by the time they were ready to see him, we get up there and they say, he's not from around here, and we're just too busy. We're not able to squeeze him in today. And that was really hard. Yeah, there's a spider. So the next day I took him to the hospital. Thankfully he was able to get medicine, but it just kind of was a shock. Wow, this is the people here this is what they have. And some of our friends, their family members were getting sick and dying, or their kids were sick, and we felt helpless. We wanted to help them, but we're limited, right, on the resources that are available. The kids like eating these, I would say the kids, all of them, I think, eat them. The people there eat these, they call them banana spiders, and they don't have a lot of sources of protein, so this is one of them. They're quite large, and they're not poisonous, but if you do get bit, it hurts. Okay, I'm going to squeeze in another funny story. And Silas loves to play with these, and he was holding one, and I think he was being too rough with it, and it bit his hand. And Emily's in the restroom, and he's screaming bloody murder. She comes out, and she sees a spider like clamped down on his hand, and she smacks it off his hand, and she's getting ready to stomp on it, and he screams, "No, no, no! I want to eat that!" And they don't eat them raw; they fry them. So at least that, right? They fry them. Silas likes to eat the body. Haley likes to eat the legs, so they break it up and. Here's a picture of one of the clinics. Okay. Some of the challenging cultural differences. There's a picture of a burning house that's really common during tribal fights or disputes where, two families or clans are fighting. They burn each other's houses down, and their houses are just, you'd call that like a grass hut. Not really grass, but they burn up really fast. And people, they call it jealousy over there. People become jealous, and that can start fights. And one of the things that we had to learn was, if we have friends and we want to give them a gift, we can't give them too many gifts because their neighbors are going to see that and say, well, why is a missionary giving you all these things and they're not giving us stuff, And it goes in with that kind of entitled, like, you guys have come here to help us. Like, we're these poor people. We don't have all the goods and cargo that you have, so, it's your, duty to help us out kind of thing. And so there's a lot of jealousy, and that goes in as well into the area of employment. If you're hiring somebody, especially if in the community, they have a higher status. The center that we lived at, there's a family who owned the ground that we bought. Like, they own the land prior to us purchasing the land. And over there, even if you buy land outright, the people that you buy it from still see it as their land because it's been their tribe's land for centuries, right? And if you cut a tree down, they know who planted that tree, and they'll come and tell you, why did you cut that tree down? So-and-so planted that 50 years ago, and those mangoes or whatever it is growing on it, like, that's our fruit. Like, the idea of purchasing land and the ownership transferring, like, it doesn't really compute. And one of the things that we observed as we were getting ready to leave was kind of stressful was the family who owned the land, the grandson of the landowner, the owner has passed away, but his grandson is kind of a troublemaker in the community, and he walks up with a machete and a group of people standing behind him, like from his village. They call them house lines over there, house line. And he's banging on the door of the office and saying, why do you guys hire all these outsiders and you don't hire us, like the family of the leaders in the village? Like, why are you hiring all these people from Simbu, from Morobe, all these other provinces, and you're not hiring us? And he was getting really angry. And obviously, the machete, it's like he's not going to cut anybody, but he's holding it to be intimidating. And just fight, anger can flare up just instantly. And you have to let them basically out their frustration, out their anger. They call it, like, out your bell. Your bell is your stomach, but they kind of see, like, your emotions, your anger is being there, so you're outing your bell heavy. And so once he was able to say everything, he calmed down. And we actually had hired people from his family, but they didn't like the job and they left, so it's not like we didn't try. But hang on. I'm just going to share one last one. There's some just really difficult things that we encountered. Some really close friends of ours, so a big thing over there is they don't view wife beating as wrong in the general culture, not necessarily in the church culture, like among believers. They do see scripturally, husbands and wives, like husbands should love their wives, like it's wrong to beat your wife. But prior to missionaries or Westerners coming, like that's always been a part of the culture where it's a male-dominant culture. And if your wife doesn't cook right or doesn't take care of the kids the way you want them to, it's like it's your right to beat her. And that's just an acceptable part of the culture. I might have to modify what I'm sharing right now. That's okay. So some very close friends of ours, new believers. The husband is, I think, had been a believer for 3 years. Very, like, our closest friends over there. And I'm very close with the husband. Emily's close with the wife. She comes and shares with Emily that her husband had hit her with a bush knife. And not the sharp end, but still, that's just wrong, right? And she shares that with Emily, and Emily tells me, and I'm just beside myself, heartbroken. Like, this is a brother in Christ. Like, I've seen really good things in his life, and this. So I prayed, and 3 days later, I had compiled a list of verses. And when I went to see him, he actually shared with me before I even brought it up what had happened, and I could tell it was troubling him. And the Holy Spirit was already convicting. And so I just asked him, hey, brother, can I pray with you? And we prayed. And I asked him for permission to share these verses. And he was willing to do that. And we did that. And afterwards, he was just really broken and wanting to reconcile with his wife. So, I mean, that was a hard thing to go through with them. But it just showed us, like, kind of the brokenness in the culture, that God is working on changing, but it's still a big part of their culture over there. You guys, being our sending church, I gotta take a drink of water. We especially feel that we shouldn't try to sugarcoat stuff. We should be open and transparent with you guys just about how our time over there went. And there were a lot of really awesome things, especially like the first few months. I mentioned, doing language learning, how exciting it was. Everything was new. This was also a very dark time for us. There were 2 families who were running the orientation program for all the new missionaries. And there weren't, on the base that we were living at, there really wasn't a lot of other people. So it was Emily and I, and then 2 other families and a single lady, and that was it. We just were expecting this orientation to be basically just, this is what life is like in PNG. Here's some tools to help you get started with getting out and doing language and culture study. But it was more than that. And what we found out was we were basically under the lens, being vetted and being constantly, like, kind of spied on. And one of the families really hurt us and said some really hurtful things, not just once, but quite a few times. And we were very vulnerable going over. We left everything, all our family, everything we're familiar with, and we're a part of this organization, and we trusted that they would have our backs and understand that we were coming as being sent by our sending church, who had already vetted us, had already said, we've observed Jordan and Emily over the years, and we see God working in their lives. They're qualified for ministry, and yet these people who didn't know us, like, had not observed us over a long period of time, are just pointing out all these flaws, all these problems, and saying, what's the deal with this? How are you going to fix this? I'm having a hard time talking about this. There were times that Emily and I both were in tears and just feeling we couldn't see. We were looking inward and saying, maybe we are not qualified and not fit for ministry. Maybe they're right. What they're saying is right, and I'm not going to go into that, but at the time we had this mindset of wanting to please, of wanting to achieve and accomplish things. And we were willing to allow these people who have experience and time on the field to speak into our lives. And so we were vulnerable with them. And we shared, struggles with them. And it was kind of put back at us, kind of used, in a sense, used against us. And it was very hurtful. And it's hard enough when you're going through culture shock, your kids are transitioning, you're trying to learn a new language, everything's just new, kind of scary sometimes, and then this is happening. And we felt like, who do we talk to? Who can we trust? I ended up sharing with Eric later on, a few months later, what we went through. But even most of the time after that, we didn't even want to think about it because it was very painful, and we just were like, you know what, this first 4 months, we just want to move past this. We don't really want to. We're over, or we're done with that. Like, we're moving forward. And so when we left that base, Madang, and we moved to the Highlands, it took us a while to feel comfortable talking with people and learning who can we trust. And we found out what we experienced in Madang wasn't, what's the word? It wasn't, oh my gosh, like the rest of the field wasn't like that, okay? And we were encouraged, but we still didn't really heal and deal with, this hurt. When we returned, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, a couple of weeks ago, we went on a 1-week retreat for cross-cultural missionaries, just dealing with transition or dealing with hurt, dealing with, trauma, whatever. Like, we had friends and other missionary friends who recommended us doing this. And I'm so thankful we did. A huge part, like, we hadn't had a break from our kids in probably 5 years. As far as, like, Emily and I going out for a night, and not having the kids. And I didn't realize it had been, like, about 5 years. That's too long. But it was a huge blessing. We were able to drop the kids off with Emily's parents and my parents and just meet with these other individuals who had been overseas and gone through similar things. And the facilitators, the people who were running this program, they too were missionaries and had spent years on the field and had gone through trauma and gone through difficult things and abusive, forms of leadership and things like that. And so we could share with them and know that it's not going to come back on us. Like, these are people from different organizations, different groups. And one thing, I want to stop really quick. Our organization, not everybody is like that couple that we dealt with. Okay, I don't want to paint this brush like Ethnos 360 is terrible. No, but there are individuals, and not just our organization, any organization, you're going to find that. People that misuse their authority and in abusive ways, and it's wrong. So when we went to this retreat, one of the things that really stood out to us, and we could see how this painful event God was actually using for good, was, you may have heard it, it's called the grace cycle and the anti-grace cycle, or the cycle of grace, the cycle of works. The cycle of works, number one, you start with achievement or accomplishment. And from that, we receive significance. I feel significant because I've accomplished this, this, and this. I've learned the language, or I've planted a church, or I've earned a degree, whatever it is, right? It's not just overseas, here too. And then we are sustained because of our achievement, and we feel accepted because of our achievement. in that order. So I achieve, I feel significant, I am sustained and accepted, all from number one, achievement. But that's not right. The gospel of grace, we are accepted by God in Christ through what he has done on the cross. We received his righteousness, Romans 8. We are not under the law, but under the law of the Spirit. And God loves us. If we are in Christ, God loves us and accepts us. And it's not based on what we do. It's not based on Emily and I going overseas and accomplishing all these great things. And it's not based on what others think as well. We are accepted by God. And this gives us significance, not of ourselves, but because of what Christ has done. This sustains us when we go through those roller coasters and those trials, and things are just going wrong left and right. And significance, sustenance. Okay, so last thing, click forward. I'm sorry, guys. This is the grace cycle. And then lastly, we can, because we are sustained and have significance because of our acceptance with God, we can produce good works. But we often get it backwards, don't we? Not just missionaries, all of you too. We all struggle with this. And as I mentioned earlier, Emily and I went with this desire to please. We didn't realize it. We were kind of blind to it. We want to go and learn the language and find coworkers and form a team and move in. Bam, bam, bam. It didn't work that way. I finished the language, but Emily struggled. And we've got 4 kids, and sickness happens a lot. We had this hurt, and I'll be honest, we were actually put on probation, and there was a period of time where they said, you can't go to bush orientation until a family over in this other center basically watches you for a period of time and says, it's okay, you can move on. And then when I had my fall in Urua, I was helping build a house, and I was walking across floor joists. My leg missed the floor joist, and I fell down and bruised my ribs really bad. And I was out for a couple months. I couldn't do anything. I was in a chair, and I became very depressed. What am I supposed to be doing right now? Why am I here? I shouldn't be here. It was a very dark time. And that's just a little bit of, sorry, I don't mean to end it like this. But you know what we learned is that God showed us this what we call the grace cycle, right? We really want to get this right going back. We're probably going to mess up. We're probably going to fall back into the old habit of trying to meet our significance from our achievement. But I really do. When we're back, as we're back here, I really want to just soak in the gospel of grace. It's amazing what God has done for us, and that he accepts us and he loves us. And we don't have to worry about the results. The achievement is his work in us. But often we try to take the reins and take over, and that's when things fall apart, and that's when things can get really dark really fast. One thing I just want to observe about how Christ deals with his people, it's found in Matthew 12, 20 through 21. He will not crush the weakest reed or put out a flickering candle. Finally, he will cause justice to be victorious, and in his name, the hope of all the world will put hope in his name. How does Jesus deal with us in our weaknesses? Does he come and say, you better shape up like that? No. He's very gentle and caring, and we experience that from other individuals and families over there and here, and we're very thankful for that. And God uses these difficulties in our lives to show us things about ourselves and reveal himself more clearly to us. And I'm thankful for it, even though it was hard. So what's next? You might be wondering, what is next for Jordan and Emily? As I mentioned, we'll be reaching out to different missionaries about partnering, other missionaries who haven't formed a team yet, and we're hoping to do that kind of starting while we're back, and especially when we go back, that's something we want to focus on. Something that was brought up to us as a possibility, because we've already established relationships within the communities surrounding the center at Sobega, and I had the opportunity to also teach, do evangelistic outreach with in a guy's house, and we had God really worked through that, and that encouraged me to be able to do that. In a very kind of dark time, God was able to strengthen me and help me in my weakness to present the gospel to a group of people. And so this opportunity that was brought up to us as basically the position would be called Community Relations Facilitator. And what I'd be doing is continuing to foster those good relationships with people in the surrounding villages and let them know, we're not just here for the people in the bush, we're here for you too. And in that position, I would have opportunity to do more of these types of Bible studies and outreaches. Bible studies with believers, discipleship, but also going to places where there's people hungry for the gospel. Because there's a lot of people leaving the bush, leaving these remote areas and coming to town to work. And they need the gospel too, and they speak Tokpisin. And Emily and I have both, completed our language study and are able to speak fluently in Tokpisin, and we're at a place where we feel this is something we could do temporarily as we're looking for coworkers and finding out where God would lead us to go. So you can be praying for us about as we consider this role. We haven't settled on it. We haven't, told leadership, yeah, we're going to do this. It's something we've been praying for a while, and I have peace about it. Emily, a really good friend of ours, said, I feel like you guys would be really gifted and suited for this type of work. And I agreed with him. I didn't feel intimidated in any way by it. So here's some prayer points I want to leave you guys with. And I don't know if we have time for a short Q&A, but yeah, just pray for us as we're searching for coworkers. Pray for PNG churches facing persecution. I really didn't know, I wasn't aware that there was actually persecution going on in PNG, but there's a lot of not Christian groups, but they would call themselves Christian, that are persecuting genuine churches and believers, fighting, killing, just a lot of really bad stuff. And there's a lot of false teaching as well. Both of those kind of go hand in hand. And then pray for us for stamina and mental fortitude as we return. There's a little bit of, I wouldn't say excitement, but like anxiety to go back. But there is a lot of, there's a lot of difficult things about being over there. It is not like, you see pictures of like this tropical environment and you think, oh, it must be awesome living there. You know what? We were walking in the mall and Emily saw a trip to the Bahamas. Like, you could win a trip to the Bahamas. She's like, what do you think, Jordan? I said, no way. I'll take a trip to Alaska. I do not want to go on any kind of vacation in the tropics. It is hard. It is, yeah. So that's all I have. If you guys have any questions.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like you talked about going back. We definitely have that. We miss our friends. We're anxious to go back. It feels like home over there. And it feels like home here too, so it's been nice to settle back in here as well. The idea of waiting on the Lord or waiting for the Lord came up quite a bit this morning, and it's something that's been on my mind lately too. Because when we very first touched down in America, it was like, I am never going back. I am staying here. You will not pry my dead fingers off of this place because that's not happening, And that's just like kind of the place where we were at, of just being really tired and stressed and burnt out. And so as we came back and we're kind of recuperating and been praying, that idea of like, okay, God, what's next for us? You know, we really need some direction. You're going to have to like really spell it out for me this time because, you know, and so this idea of waiting on the Lord. And a lot of times it's for God's timing that he wants us to wait, right? Because we are people of action. If he gave us the plan, we'd be like, let's go. All right, we got it, the plan, right? And it's got to be done in his timing. But I think another big part of that too is, are we ready for his answer? And there's those times when our hearts, like if he had said, no, you got to go back, I would have been like, So there's that, yes, that idea of like, sometimes God is ready to give us the answer, but we're not ready to hear it. And so we've been working through some of that as well. All right, I've got 3 things. I've been thinking of questions. So this is going to be the big money question, is for the coffee. But I've also got these wonderful belums that our friends make. This is kind of a way we like to support our ladies that are really close to us. We buy the belums that they make. They make these out of yarn, where they used to make them out of like roots. They rub them like this to make them soft and weave them together and make these big long balls of string. And then they take old umbrella spines and they make needles out of that and they weave them together with these. So nowadays they use a lot of yarn. They get a lot of yarn from places and they make them with yarn, but sometimes you can find the bush belums in the market too. So how many languages are in Papua New Guinea? Oh, I saw this hand first.
About 9,000 or more.
No, right here. Yeah.
300 to 400, but closer to 400.
No, not it.
900.
Close to 900. Which one do you want?
The round one.
Coming at you.
Thank you.
Okay. What state is PNG close to in square footage? California. You can run that back there. All right. And this one is, you would have been paying really close attention for this one. So, what city do we live in Papua New Guinea? You got it? What is it? Lily? No? Oh, okay. She doesn't have it. Madang was the first place we lived, but it's not the place we live now. I'll give it to you if nobody gets the second place. Yeah? No. Garoka. Garoka is the name of the city that we live in the highlands in PNG. But I'll give you Madang because you remembered Madang. That was the first place we lived. So.
I know today's a little bit different than normal, but I'm going to bug Jordan to come in. And Emily, don't go away. Going to have them in the center over here. And if I could go ahead and have our elders and our missions team come on up. They're sending church and want them to know that we've been praying for them consistently. Not just Wednesdays and Sundays, but many of those that are here, you guys are on their daily prayer list. That even in the darkest times, we're X amount of 1,000 miles away, but we're still here for you guys. So let me go ahead and pray, and then we'll be dismissed. Lord, as we come before you, just want to lift up Jordan and Emily and the kids. Lord, that you have impressed upon them to reach out to this country that has not only false teaching, but miscommunication about who you are and about the gospel. Lord, that as they're here and they're gaining support and informing the many churches that are supporting them, this might be a time of transformation, confirmation, but also just a time of rest, recuperation from the hurt, from the pain, and from the tireless work of learning, ministering. Lord, that you would stir in their hearts the desire to return, and that as the time approaches, that you would continue to conform their minds, their hearts, to be ready to go back and to minister to those different villages and the people that need to know about you. Lord, that you might give them clarity to this new position as they're trying to build a team. Or that you would draw the right, another set of couples to join them in reaching a group that needs the gospel, that needs to set up a place in which they can teach and preach and spread the gospel in the middle of the bush. Lord, we thank you how you have gifted each and every one of them, and even the kids, to be able to reach this culture. Pray that you would give them the patience of Jeremiah, but also, Lord, give them the fervor as Paul to reach the people in whom you've called them to reach. Lord, as they're sending church, we would ask that you would continue to bless them and to keep them and to show them where you're working and where you're at. We praise you. We thank you. In Jesus.
Amen.
Let's go and stand as we're dismissed. Lord, now I ask that you would bless us, that you would keep us, that you might make your face shine upon us and give us rest, and that we might consider how you are working and acting not only in Papua New Guinea, but right here at Mount Pleasant. We praise you